are concerned about the conditions on board the USS Lincoln.
No, that ship is moving. No, they're not. That ship is moving right now, or very shortly, and it's being replaced with another very similar ship.
266 days at sea, USS Lincoln finally heads home after one of the U.S. Navy's longest and most demanding deployments. USS Lincoln's long war ends. The aircraft carrier is now set for its homeward journey after months in the combat zone. Navy pushes back on crisis claims as officials defend the USS Lincoln crew and call them victors, not victims. More than 200 days in a combat zone, USS Lincoln's epic deployment is finally coming to an end after months of sustained operations. After deploying 1.5 million pounds of ordnance, USS Lincoln is finally rotating home following its grueling mission at sea. Never broken, the Trump administration defends USS Lincoln's 266-day mission and praises the crew for enduring the extraordinary deployment. Pentagon hits back at fake news claims, insisting the USS Lincoln crew are not victims but sailors who completed a historic mission. The USS Abraham Lincoln is finally set to return home after completing a record-length 266-day deployment, bringing an extraordinary mission at sea toward its end. The aircraft carrier spent around 200 days operating inside a combat zone during the extended mission, keeping its crew under sustained operational pressure for months. Acting Navy Secretary Hung Cao said the Lincoln's deployment was extended because the mission demanded it, requiring the carrier to remain in the region far longer than originally planned. Cao said the crew was pushed to its limits throughout the deployment, but insisted that the sailors never broke despite the intense demands placed on them. Hung Cao said, and I quote, "Unfortunately, the media are trying to paint our warriors as victims. Not only is that dishonest, but it takes away the focus on the enemy and the threat it poses against our nation, people, and way of life. Here is the truth: 266 days deployed, 200 days in a combat zone, 10,000 plus sorties. 1.5 million pounds of ordnance dropped and retention rates on the ABE are amongst the highest of all carriers. It is also true, a small number of mental health cases were treated with no loss of life. Meal plans were adjusted when fresh resupply was unavailable, without a single meal being missed. Calls home were limited when the operational threat was too high." Unquote. The US Navy says the Lincoln completed more than 10,000 sorties during its exceptionally long combat mission, highlighting the scale and intensity of its operations. The carrier also dropped around 1.5 million pounds of ordnance during the deployment, underscoring just how heavily involved the Lincoln was in combat operations. The Navy said the carrier's crew kept flight operations and other critical missions running through months of continuous deployment, maintaining the ship's combat readiness until the final stretch. Pentagon spokesperson Kingsley Wilson rejected reports that the USS Abraham Lincoln crew was left without basic support during its prolonged deployment, pushing back against claims about deteriorating conditions. Wilson said a small number of mental health cases were treated during the deployment, while emphasizing that there was no loss of life linked to those cases. Kingsley Wilson said, and I quote, "The fake news media wants you to ignore the facts about the USS Lincoln. A small number of mental health cases were treated with no loss of life. Meal plans were adjusted when fresh resupply was unavailable, without a single meal being missed. Calls home were limited when the operational threat was too high. Our sailors on the USS Lincoln are victors, not victims. Cheap shots by the media to misrepresent their historic mission are disgraceful." Unquote. The Navy has also said it has not seen an increase in suicidal ideation among the crew, disputing claims that the extended deployment caused a broader mental health crisis aboard the carrier. Wilson accused media reports of misrepresenting conditions aboard the carrier, arguing that some accounts failed to accurately reflect the reality faced by the crew during the prolonged deployment. She said the Lincoln sailors were victors, not victims, after completing what officials described as a historic and exceptionally demanding deployment. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has also dismissed reports about conditions aboard the ship, pushing back against claims that the crew was inadequately supported during its long mission. On August 14th, Trump also dismissed concerns over conditions for sailors aboard USS Lincoln, adding his own defense of the crew as the carrier prepares to return home.
So, the headline today, does everybody know Caroline is with us? The headline today is exactly that. You see it? It says prescription drug prices, of course, sharply dropped in more than 60 years. Okay, got it? Everybody have it? And I I told you that was going to happen. The second headline is this. The Trump administration marks 15 straight months with zero border releases as apprehensions was 94%. In other words, the border. And that means for 15 straight months we've had zero people crossing the border. Are you impressed? Is anybody impressed? You are. Thank you. I'll give you the first question, therefore. Go ahead. Go ahead. Anybody?
What do you hope to accomplish this weekend?
I have a lot of things that are happening. A lot of good things. The economy is doing unbelievably from the standpoint of Wall Street just getting on the record. 80 times the best market in history. And that's good for 401ks. It's good for a lot of things, but it's great for 401ks and jobs. I always say it's great for 401ks and jobs. So we hit number 80 record. So 80 days out of a short 1.5 years. We have a record stock market. 401ks have set a new record. And you take a look at the border. 15 months with zero people coming through our southern border. Pretty amazing. And drug prices again. Pushing drug prices down more than at any time over 60 years. Okay, what else do I have to say?
Service members are concerned about the conditions on board the USS Lincoln.
No, that ship is moving. That ship is moving right now, or very shortly, and it's being replaced with another very simple ship.
Deployment's gone on too long. Are you worried
No.
about how
Not nearly long enough. Thank you, everybody.
A violent clash has reportedly erupted aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, with Iranian media claiming that 7 US Navy personnel were killed in the alleged incident. The claim comes from Iranian media, which alleged that the sailors and other personnel were killed during a deadly brawl aboard the American aircraft carrier. Several others were reportedly wounded in the confrontation, according to Iran's Tasnim news agency, which cited an unnamed military source. Tasnim reported that the alleged clash involved US Navy personnel, but the details have not been independently verified. The claim has not been confirmed by the US Navy or US Central Command, leaving key details surrounding the alleged incident unclear. The reported confrontation comes as tensions have been rising aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln following its prolonged deployment and growing concerns over conditions facing its crew. The alleged clash reportedly occurred after CENTCOM advisor boarded the carrier to address complaints raised by sailors and other crew members. According to the report, the CENTCOM official was reportedly booed by members of the crew, with water bottles allegedly thrown during the confrontation. The situation reportedly escalated further, with the confrontation allegedly turning into a physical fight involving knives and other bladed weapons. The reported incident comes after the USS Abraham Lincoln's prolonged deployment, with the carrier having left San Diego on November 21st before being redirected toward the West Asia region. The prolonged deployment of the USS Abraham Lincoln has reportedly pushed some sailors to the breaking point after months at sea. Multiple sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln reportedly tried to jump overboard as the carrier's deployment continued. The aircraft carrier's crew has spent 250 consecutive days near Iran without returning to land, intensifying concerns over the strain. Reports describe the deployment as a record for a U.S. aircraft carrier in modern times, highlighting its extraordinary length. The Lincoln left San Diego on November 21st before being redirected toward West Asia as tensions with Iran escalated. Its mission, which is now stretched into a 9th month, was originally expected to end in May but was later extended. The prolonged deployment has raised serious questions about the mental strain facing more than 5,000 sailors and Marines aboard the carrier. Around 200 relatives raised concerns during a San Diego town hall with U.S. Navy officials over the prolonged deployment. Families said the extended mission had severely affected sailors' mental health and placed enormous pressure on those serving at sea. One spouse reportedly told officials that her husband had texted her saying he hoped he would not wake up the following day. Another family member said her husband attempted to go overboard after learning that his already lengthy deployment had been extended. A different sailor's wife reportedly said her husband intervened to stop a fellow crew member from going overboard. Lawmakers have separately highlighted complaints about difficult living conditions aboard the carrier as the deployment continues. Reported problems include mold, broken toilets, laundry disruptions, and a lack of hot water affecting sailors aboard the ship. Congressman Mike Levin also cited complaints about food quality and shortages of basic toiletries during the prolonged deployment. Congressman Jason Crow said the strain on sailors and their families was continuing to build with every additional week at sea. Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth previously dismissed complaints about food, water, and mold as fake news, drawing further criticism from families. The latest reports have renewed scrutiny of conditions aboard the carrier and the wider impact of its exceptionally long deployment.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.